It is soft enough to bend in your bare hands, too weak to make a tool, too heavy to wear as armor, and, for almost all of human history, completely useless for staying alive. You cannot eat it. You cannot burn it for warmth. It will not stop an arrow. And yet, for 5,000 years, the people have crossed oceans, emptied entire treasuries, and killed each other in the streets. For this, one metal. Out of 118 elements on the periodic table, humanity reached out and picked this one to mean everything. To mean power, to mean safety, to mean wealth itself. Not whether gold is valuable, but why this metal? And nothing else? We're here to ask the simple question behind everything worth anything. Why money? The value was never inside the metal. It was a test. Nature printed a catalog of 118 elements, and history tried every single one of them. The gases drift away. The liquids spill. Some burst into flame the moment they touch water. Some quietly poison the hand that carries them. Iron rusts. Copper corrodes. Silver turns black on the shelf. Platinum won't even melt in an ancient furnace. Rule by rule, the field collapses until the whole periodic table has been wiped out, except for exactly one survivor. The gold. Atomic number 79. It does not rust. It does not tarnish. It does not react with almost anything you could throw at it. It is soft enough to beat into shape with a simple hammer, yet rare enough to still feel precious. Rare, but not impossible. You really can pan a single fleck of it out of a cold river. And then there's that warm, unmistakable glow. No other metal on Earth looks quite like it. So here is the idea that changes everything. Gold did not win because some king woke up one morning and decreed it was special. It won because the cold, blind laws of chemistry had already knocked out every single other option. The ancients ran a scientific experiment across thousands of years without ever realizing it was an experiment. And gold was simply the last one standing. Let me show you what never corrodes actually means, with a true story. In 1857, a steamship called the Central America sailed straight into a hurricane off the coast of the Carolinas. In her hold sat tonnes of gold, fresh from the California gold rush. She went down, and she took the gold with her more than a mile and a half down into the cold and the black. And there it sat, under crushing salt water, in total darkness, for over 130 years. When treasure hunters finally found her in the late 1980s, the wooden ship had dissolved. The iron fittings had rotted to nothing. But the gold? The coins looked like they had been minted yesterday. When it was finally hauled back up into the light, the recovered treasure was worth more than $100 million. Coins and bars that had spent longer on the ocean floor than most countries have even existed, and every single one of them came up gleaming. Saltwater destroys almost everything we know. It could not lay a finger on the gold. That, right there, is the entire reason this metal became money. It keeps its promise, even at the bottom of the sea. And here is just how rare we are talking. Take every gram of gold ever pulled out of the earth, all of it, every coin in every pocket, every ring on every hand, every bar stacked in every vault across the whole of human history. Now melt it all together into one solid block. That block would be a cube only about 22 meters on each side. That's it. The entire world's supply would fit underneath a single tennis court. Put another way, all the gold humanity has ever touched would fill barely 3.5 Olympic swimming pools. That is every wedding ring and every gold tooth and every coin ever struck for all of time. More than 200,000 tons. And you could picture the whole pile in your head. And even today, with all our machines and deep mines, we add only about 1 or 2% to that stack each year. It barely grows. You cannot print more of it. You can only dig. And that is the second half of trust. Not just that gold lasts forever, but that no one, anywhere, can suddenly conjure a flood of it and wash your savings away. And then something genuinely strange happened. Again and again, all across history. Civilizations that had never met, that had no way of even knowing the others existed, kept arriving at the exact same answer. Ancient Egypt, the Kingdom of Lydia, Imperial China, the great empires of the Americas. All of them, gold. They didn't copy one another. They each ran the same physical test, with the same elements, and got the same result. Around 600 years before Christ, the Kingdom of Lydia struck the first official gold coins, a small stamped disc you could trust by its weight alone, without having to trust the stranger who handed it to you. And that was the leap that changed everything. For the first time in history, value became something you could fold into a purse and carry in your pocket. Now stop and think about how impossible that coincidence is. No shared language, no trade route between them, no conference, no contact, no way to copy a neighbor on the far side of the planet. And still, the same answer, over and over. That is not culture spreading from one place. That is chemistry showing through in all of them at once. Now jump all the way forward to the modern world. Gold climbed from coins in a pocket to become the silent anchor of the entire economy. Paper money, when it first appeared, was never meant to have value on its own. It began life as a promise, a printed slip that said, you could, anytime you liked, walk into a bank and trade it back for real gold. And after the Second World War, the world made that promise official. Under a sweeping agreement called Bretton Woods, the American dollar was locked to gold at exactly $35 an ounce. And then, almost every other currency on Earth was locked to the dollar. So follow that chain all the way down. Every banknote in every wallet, in every country, was in the end standing on a foundation of metal sitting in a vault. But there was a crack built into the deal from the very start. America kept printing far more dollars than it had gold to back them. Every extra dollar was a claim someone could one day come and collect. And there was now vastly more paper than there was metal. By the 1960s, other countries did the quiet math and realized it. France started shipping its dollars back across the Atlantic and demanding the real gold in return. The vaults began to drain, and the promise that held up the whole world started to crack. And then, on the 15th of August, 1971, it simply ended. In a live televised address, President Nixon went on air and cut the dollar's link to gold. It was temporary, he promised the nation. It was never, ever restored. And in that single moment, money quietly changed what it was. Overnight, it stopped being a claim on metal and became a claim on trust, pure shared belief, backed by nothing you could ever hold in your hand. And now watch what happened to the price of the very gold that used to define the dollar. From $35 an ounce on the day Nixon spoke to thousands of dollars an ounce today. Here is the part to sit with. The gold itself did not change, not one atom. It is the same unbreakable metal it has always been since the birth of the planet. What changed was our money. So if our money no longer needs gold at all, why on earth hasn't it just disappeared into history? Here's the part that genuinely surprises people. The very institutions that print the money still quietly hoard the metal. The world's central banks sit on tens of thousands of tons of gold locked in their vaults right now. And in the last few years, they haven't been selling it. They've been buying, quietly, aggressively, at the fastest pace in decades. A great deal of that buying began after 2022 when Russia's reserves were frozen almost overnight by Western sanctions. Governments around the world watched that happen and quietly decided they wanted far more of their wealth held in something that no one else could ever switch off. By 2025, for the first time in generations, the world's central banks held more of their reserves in gold than in American government debt. So sit with the strangeness of that. The only people on Earth who can create unlimited paper money out of thin air still want the one thing they cannot create. And here, finally, is the deepest reason of all. Gold is the only money on Earth that is no one's promise. Stop and think about every other kind of money you have ever held. $1 in your wallet is a promise from a government. The balance in your bank account is a promise from a bank. A share of stock is a promise from a company. A token in an app is a promise from whoever happens to run the app. And every single one of those promises can be broken. A government can print more and melt its value away. A bank can fail and lock the doors. A company can go bankrupt overnight. An app can simply switch your account off. Gold breaks none of them. For one simple reason. It never made a promise in the first place. No government can print it into existence. No company can default on it. It just sits there, rare, unchanging, and answerable to absolutely no one. And that is a kind of trust that nothing else humans have ever invented can offer. So let's come all the way back to the real question, the one we started with. Gold's value, in the end, was never truly chemical. The chemistry only made it the single most reliable thing in the world to agree on. Because value, real value, is, in the end, just a story that a society chooses to tell itself. And gold is simply the one story that never rusts. The one shared agreement that has outlived every single empire that ever made it, every king, every flag, every currency, all turned to dust while the metal stayed exactly the same. And that is the real reason that, in the last decade or so, people tried to build a digital version of it. Something scarce. Something durable. Something owned and controlled by no one at all. They even called it digital gold. Whether that copy genuinely works, whether a line of code can truly do what 5 billion years of chemistry did, well, that is a story for another video. But it grows straight out of the same 5,000-year-old question we began with today. Not simply why gold, but the far bigger one buried underneath it. What makes anything worth anything at all? Why money?